for a downgraded version of existing protocols. The National Police is bracing for the possible rise of criminal activities once quarantine rules are eased later this week. More areas in southern Luzon and eastern Visayas are placed under tropical cyclone wind signal number 1 because of severe tropical storm Ambo. And the House of Representatives, convening as a committee of the whole, passes a bill granting ABS-CBN provisional franchise until October this year. The government backtracked on its earlier announcement and once again places the entire Philippines under community quarantine measures. This comes after some LGUs appealed the decision of the national government to lift the lockdown in those deemed as low-risk areas. Because of this, the Interagency Task Force Against COVID-19 introduces another community quarantine category called Modified GCQ. Let's discuss this development with our Malacanang correspondent, Maricel Halili. Maricel, let's go straight to the details. What is this Modified GCQ and what is its difference compared to the other categories?
Okay, Jess, we already asked Secretary Roque what does it mean by modified general community quarantine. But they cannot give us the clear guidelines yet on the modified GCQ because if we recall, yesterday IATF has released resolution number 35 which lifts the quarantine in some areas, particularly in regions 1, 4B, Region 5 except Albay, 6, 8, 10, 12, and BARM. But like what you said earlier, after some local executives appealed to the IATF that they cannot handle areas without quarantine, the IATF once again decided to impose modified GCQ to these particular areas. But they still have to finalize the guidelines of in areas under modified GCQ.
Well, at least, Maricel, for the new categories or at least for the new classifications that were released by the IATF, what's going to be allowed and what's not? I do understand that meetings will be allowed only, of course, however, it's going to be with a limited number of participants.
Okay, Jess, what is clear are the guidelines under areas or in the areas under ECQ, modified ECQ, and general community quarantine. So, for example, in areas under ECQ and the modified ECQ and GCQ, all ordinary individuals are required to stay at home. But in GCQ, those only vulnerable and the transmitters of the virus, well, who's basically the youth, are not allowed to go out of their houses. For ECQ, all outdoor exercises are not allowed, but in modified ECQ, they are allowed to do some outdoor exercises, but these are limited to jogging, walking, and biking, and for as long as they will still implement a minimum health standard like wearing face masks and social distancing, that's allowed. In general community quarantine, some sports are already allowed. These are the limited contact sports, for example, tennis or golf. For ECQ, like what you said, gatherings are already allowed in modified ECQ, but we have to be clear about it. They will only allow meetings if, well, the maximum is only 5 individuals. And in GCQ areas, 10 individuals maximum. For travel, public transportation are not yet allowed in ECQ and modified ECQ. But in GCQ areas, buses, jeepneys, trains, tricycles, public transportation will be allowed, provided that only 50% of the passengers will be allowed to ride these public vehicles to ensure that social distancing will be imposed still. And government offices will also be opened in modified ECQ, but only 50% of their workforce will be allowed to go to their offices. The other half will still be working at home. In GCQ, they will impose an alternative work arrangement, for example, 4-day work week. So basically, those are some of the guidelines. But of course, whether it's ECQ or GCQ, there's still a need to impose the quarantine pass because they still have to filter the people who will be going outside of their houses.
Well, Mr. Something worth noting that you mentioned earlier, sports activities will be allowed, at least for the non-contact sports. Question now is, I would like to think that some of our viewers would be interested to know, will viewers, live audience be allowed in these sports activities?
No, it won't be allowed, Jester, because like we discussed earlier, mass gatherings are not yet allowed even in GCQ areas. Although there will be meetings or just a small gathering limited to 10 individuals only. More than 10 individuals are not allowed in GCQ areas.
Okay, what's clear now is that we have at least clearer guidelines when it comes to those areas which will be placed under modified ECQ and GCQ. Question now is, when can we expect at least a much clearer set of guidelines for the modified GCQ naman? Since this is relatively really what's new for us and the rest of our viewers.
Secretary Roque promised us earlier that he will discuss the guidelines on the areas under modified GCQ probably tomorrow. So probably we'll get a more clearer picture of what will happen in those areas by tomorrow.
All right, thank you for those updates, Maricel Halili. COVID cases in the country continue to rise. As of 4 p.m. on Wednesday, 268 more people were infected with the coronavirus, bringing the total tally to more than 11,600. At least 20 people died overnight due to the disease. The national death count now approaches 800. More than 100 people recovered from COVID-19 in the past 24 hours. So far, more than 2,000 people have gotten better from the coronavirus infection. Thousands of OFWs are stranded in different parts of the world because of the COVID-19 pandemic. They are now appealing to the government for assistance. Dale De Vera has the details.
Yan Atienza, who works in Saudi Arabia, pleaded to the government for help. Atienza says his agency has not given any kind of aid in the past 3 months.
Kami po ay humingi ng tulong sa inyo. Nananawagan po kami, lalong-lalo na sa inyo, Idol, Sir Rapi Tulfo, at sa mga sangay ng gobyerno. Kung maaari po sana ay matulungan ninyo kaming makauwi sa Pilipinas sa kadahilanang ang aming kumpanya dito ay pinabayaan na kami.
Filipinos working as interns in the United States are also facing the same problem. Their visa sponsors and the Exchange Visitor Program Committee simply advised them to return to the Philippines. In a letter sent to Filipino J1 visa holders, Philippine Ambassador to the United States Jose Manuel Romualdez explained they are at great risk if they remain in the North American country without a source of income, support system, accommodation, and medical insurance coverage. Over in Dubai, over 20 OFWs banded together to unify their grievances. They have been stuck in the Middle Eastern city for weeks now, given the limited number of flights to and from the Philippines. The Interagency Task Force promises to increase the limit to 600 arriving passengers a day, but this could be a problem.
Napuno halos yung quarantine facility natin. Okay. So, they decided na to temporarily suspend yung inbound para makahinga ika nga yung facility natin sa quarantine. Okay. Para mabigyan ng daan yung mga nandun sa quarantine facilities, makauwi na ng kanya-kanyang probinsya.
So far, the DFA has repatriated around 26,000 workers. The National Task Force Against COVID-19 meanwhile asks for understanding from returning OFWs over the delay in the release of PCR tests.
Ang turnaround time po ng PCR ay umaabot po minsan ng 5 days. Kung sinuwab po natin ang tao, talaga maghihintay po sila. At saka nakita po natin, kung meron pong 23,000 na tao, napakahirap po niyan na swab every day.
The Labor Department also announced that the fund for the ACAP program, a one-time financial assistance program for OFWs, is drying up. Secretary Silvestre Bello says at least 1.47 billion pesos of the 1.5 billion peso fund has been released to about 140,000 OFWs. The fund was intended to assist 150,000 OFWs. But Bello says they've received as many as 375,000 applications.
We continue to accept application with a caveat na kung sakasakaling maubos na yung 1.5 billion at hindi naman na-release yung additional request namin of 2.5 billion, then hanggang doon na lang po ang may bibigay namin tulong sa ating mga OFW.
Because of this, Dole is asking Congress for an additional 2.5 billion pesos for the ACAP program. OFW remittances breached 33 billion pesos last year. For News 5, Dale De Vera, we're One News.
The PNP is about to get their hands full with several areas set to relax quarantine measures this week. That's on top of having to contain the spread of COVID-19 among their ranks. Ryan Ang tells us more.
The Philippine National Police now bracing for the impact of the scheduled transition from ECQ to GCQ in some areas in the country. PNP Chief Archie Gamboa said that because of ECQ, crime rates in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao dropped were more than half in the past month. Physical distancing has also made it impossible for the execution of common crimes. That's why Gamboa says wrongdoers have set their sights on cybercrimes, such as fraud, estafa, extortion, and fake news. And now that quarantine protocol in some areas are about to be downgraded, the PNP is preparing for the worst. But as of the moment, they are still waiting for clear guidelines from the IATF.
The details of all of these things are still to be discussed by IATF, and tomorrow they'll be coming up with the details for this.
Still, authorities will set up checkpoints and conduct random inspections.
Tuloy-tuloy po ang checkpoint. Hindi po mawawala ang checkpoint. Yung mga establishments at saka yung mga manufacturing companies na bubukas na, siya rin namin ay inspekin para to ensure yung compliance nila sa mga requirements ng DOH.
Meanwhile, the PNP is now asking permission from the Health Department and the WHO to develop their own RT-PCR testing laboratory. The number of confirmed COVID-19 cases among police officers has jumped to at least 140, which is more than 1% of the total cases in the country. Unlike Camp Karingal, the PNP insists there is no need to place Camp Krame under lockdown since they're segregating exposed personnel from their comrades. For News 5, Ryan Ang, we are One News.
Congressmen earlier convened as a committee of the whole to tackle ABS-CBN's franchise renewal bid. The House has approved House Bill 6732, granting ABS-CBN a provisional franchise until October 31, 2020, while both chambers of Congress are hearing the network's renewal bid. Senators earlier filed a similar bill allowing the media giant to operate until June 2022. However, the bill must first be signed into law before the Kapamilya Network can reopen its free TV and radio broadcasting stations. House Speaker Alan Peter Cayetano hit at the Solicitor General for warning the NTC against granting the media giant a temporary license to operate.
The NTC gave its testimony and commitment on March 10. If you had any objections, Mr. Solicitor General, why did you not communicate with Congress? Why choose to remain silent for close to 2 months and on the eve of the opening of Congress, come out with your threats to the NTC?
We'll pause for a short break, but when the big story returns, Tropical Storm Ambo intensifies into a severe tropical storm as more areas are placed under signal number 1. And NCRPO Chief Debold Sinas apologizes for his birthday celebration, but he says some photos were old ones. I'm Jess De Los Santos and you're watching The Big Story. More areas are now under tropical cyclone wind signal number 1 due to severe tropical storm Ambo. Latest addition to the list are Sorsogon, Icao Island, Catanduanes, and the southern portion of Albay. Northern Samar, the northern portion of Samar Province, and the northern portion of Eastern Samar are also under signal number 1. Pag-asa last located Ambo off the coast of Borongan, Eastern Samar, packing maximum sustained winds of 95 kilometers per hour and gustiness of up to 115 kph. Based on forecast data, it is expected to intensify further into typhoon category before its expected landfall over the eastern coast of Bicol region on Friday. With severe tropical storm Ambo expected to further intensify before it reaches the Luzon landmass, let's get updates on how the NDRRMC is bracing for its possible impact with NDRRMC spokesperson Mark Timbal on the line. Good evening. Asek Mark, kamusta ho ang preparations ninyo for Ambo?
Hi, Sir Jess. Good evening po, and to all our viewers, good evening. Our preparations for Storm Ambo is in full swing. 2 days ago, we have initially conducted an assessment, a predecessor risk assessment, and we had made a follow-up assessment just this morning. All local governments in the areas that are in the track of the storm have already been informed on the possible impact of the storm, as well as to make sure that when they conduct all relative activities, they have to consider social distancing.
Exactly, which leads me to my next question, sir. What's going to be the difference when it comes to your evacuation protocols, given this whole backdrop that we are under a pandemic?
Yes, sir. This is a unique situation, given that we are facing a natural hazard with a pandemic in place. One of the differences here is that when we process evacuations, these evacuations will be done way before. That means preemptive evacuations are key, and that the populations, when they are moved to safer areas, they must still be wearing the masks, the surgical masks and protective equipment, and that the transportation should also make sure social distancing measures are implemented.
And at the same time, one question would have to be in terms of for the rescuers, will they be wearing PPEs as well?
That's correct. It's also a requirement that all people who will be involved in the movement of the evacuees and the evacuation process, they should be wearing protective equipment so as to make sure that they are free from the possibility of infection.
All right, thank you for that. That was NDRRMC spokesperson Mark Timbal. NCRPO Chief Sinas apologizes after photos of alleged violation of lockdown measures during his birthday celebration went viral. However, he claims that some of the images circulating on social media were old photos and were not taken during the supposed event. The photos in question were uploaded on the NCRO's Facebook page. The post has been deleted since. PNP Chief Archie Gamboa also ordered the Internal Affairs Service to investigate the incident. Cebu City Mayor Edgardo Labella says the high number of confirmed cases in the city could be an effect of mass testing. Labella notes mass testing and contact tracing are the most effective weapons against the coronavirus. As of today, 1,680 confirmed cases have been reported in the Queen City of the South, the most in any city in the country. But Labella says they've only tested 10% of Cebu City's total population.
Among the local government units in the entire country, we have tested more than 10,376 individuals already. I think we have the highest number of people tested. Mm-hmm. And I think it is for this reason that there is really an increase in the number of people found to be positive. But one thing good is that even if we have about 1,000, as of yesterday, 1,660, that's about 10% of the 10,000 that we have tested.
The mayor is also asking the national government to keep Cebu City under ECQ beyond May 15. Labella pointed out that downgrading the existing ECQ could hamper the city's mass testing efforts.
We are asking for a reconsideration that maybe we should at this point in time stick first to enhanced community quarantine. And as what we have heard, the guideline the only guideline that we heard about modified is that we can have operate a manufacturing business with about 50% of the workforce. This is the only guideline that we have heard. So, considering that we are still in the process of continuing a strategic and calibrated testing of at least 10% of our population, would rather that we would stick at this point to enhanced community quarantine. And we are asking for a reconsideration.
Private companies are also pitching in to help the government provide the needs of poor families. PLDT Smart Foundation worked with the Armed Forces of the Philippines to hand out food to those who have been severely affected by the coronavirus crisis. Patricia Mangune has more on this story.
Sacks of vegetables from local farmers in the Cordillera region made their way to the Civil Relations Service of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, courtesy of the PLDT Smart Foundation. This will help sustain AFP's mobile kitchen program, which distributes thousands of free cooked meals to poor families in Metro Manila who have been affected by the enhanced community quarantine.
Ang ating pong mobile kitchen nakakapagluto ng higit kumulang 2,000 para sa 2,000 katao kada isang kainan. Sa atin pong concept ng mobile kitchen, 2 beses po isang araw tayong nagluluto at ito po ay dinadala natin sa higit kumulang 4,000 hanggang 5,000 mga kababayan natin na naghihirap dito po sa Metro Manila.
Yesterday, the PLDT Smart Foundation has also supplied the AFP with 50 sacks of rice. The AFP has been a longtime partner of the PLDT Smart Foundation in various relief operations, especially during calamities.
Kaya tayo sa PLDT Smart Foundation, sa TV5 MVP Group, hindi tayo masyado makalabas, so we really rely on our AFP partners. And at the same time, kasi ang nakita namin, sila ang natutulungan natin at the same time sila yung tumutulong sa communities. Like with this mobile kitchen, imbis na usually meron kaming feeding program with TV5, we have our own food truck. But since we can't go out at this time, sila AFP naman ang aming partners to bring our food and the feeding to the communities.
The foundation also provided more than 150 packed lunch meals to AFP personnel who continue to work inside Camp Aguinaldo.
Nagpapasalamat po kami sa sponsor po ng tanghalian ngayong araw na to, yung PLDT Smart Foundation po. Salamat po, malaking tulong po ito para po sa ating mga frontliners dito sa Aguinaldo. Sa awa ng Diyos, ligtas naman po kami dito. Well-maintained naman po yung lugar, na nadidisinfect naman po siya regularly. Kaya with regards po sa safety po namin, okay naman po.
The PLDT Smart Foundation plans to continue helping out the AFP. It's also encouraging other members of the MVP group of companies to join in relief efforts as well. For News 5, Patricia Mangune. We are One News.
Over in Dubai, the world's tallest building, the Burj Khalifa, was transformed into the world's tallest donation box on Tuesday night. Launched as part of the 10 Million Meals campaign, companies, organizations, and members of the public switched on one light on the facade of the building in return for their donation. Each light represented one meal or food parcel. As the final donation was made, the last of the 1.2 million lights was illuminated at the top of the tower, triggering a light show that could be seen for miles across the oil-rich nation. And that wraps up today's big story. Catch us again tomorrow at 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250. Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. I'm Jess De Los Santos. We are One News. Good evening.